Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you so much for joining us today on this auspicious occasion of Labor Day in the US, of course. So thank you, Uda, for joining us. We'd like to seek your good wishes and your blessings so that we can go through the this is the Ras Leela chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, chapter 33. So let's make a start. Wanted to seek the blessings of Radha Madhav and Krishna Balaram, Radha Shyam Sundar, Gonitai, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj. These are very confidential chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we have to try to understand these in the right mood.
Okay, so this is 10:33:39. Kartam Raj Vadubidam Shavishnu Shadano Vito Anu Shrunyat Atava Nyavya Bhaktim Param Bhagavati Patilabhya Kamam Hridrogashwa Paponati Acharina Dhira. Anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus, he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart.
So these pastimes are spiritual transcendental pastimes between the Lord and his internal potency, his devotees, the gopis. And these are not lusty desires fulfilled or dusty affairs of this material world. And that's why if one recites these, reads these, remembers these wonderful pastimes in the right mood, one will very quickly attain the Lord's pure devotional service. And we will conquer lust, which of course we are subjected to. So what is this chapter's name is Ras Dance, and it describes Krishna's Ras Dance, which he enjoyed with his beloved girlfriends in the forests along the Yamuna River. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is most expert in the knowledge of transcendental moods. When the cowherd girls, the gopis, heard Sri Krishna speak these wonderful, charming words, so Krishna was pacifying them that I only left you to increase your love for me. So he spoke some really wonderful words to the gopis, and they became enchanted. They forgot their distress caused by separation from him. Touching his transcendental limbs, they felt all their desires fulfilled. In the company of the gopis who were tightly bound to him by the ropes of affection and totally dedicated to his service, the Lord expanded himself in numerous forms. So there's many people who imitate the Lord and want to do the Ras dance with various ladies in the name that Krishna did it, we can do it. Okay, Krishna did it. So why don't you also expand yourself like Krishna has expanded himself? As many gopis there were, Krishna expanded himself. So if you can do that, fair enough. Or the other example given is, okay, you want to imitate the Lord? Why don't you drink the poison that came out of the nectar of the ocean, and see how you feel after you've drunk it. In the company of the gopis who were tightly bound, even after Lord Krishna manifested himself in numerous forms, each gopi thought he was standing next to her alone. This is the potency of the Lord. He expanded himself. The demigods and their wives were overwhelmed with eagerness to witness this Ras dance. So they were looking from the heavens, and they soon crowded the sky with their hundreds of celestial aeroplanes. So they were very eager to see this. This is really the pinnacle of spiritual rasas, tastes. Gopis enjoyed with Krishna. The gopis became intoxicated with their enthusiasm to enjoy the Ras dance. And thus they began satisfying Krishna's senses by singing, dancing, gesturing amorously. The sweet voices of the gopis filled all the directions. Mhm. And then we see the description of how each gopi reciprocated with Krishna in different ways. And this really gave great pleasure to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, the gopis as well. One gopi, joining Lord Mukund in his singing, sang pure melodious tones that arose harmoniously above his. Krishna was pleased and showed great appreciation for her performance, saying, "Excellent, excellent." Then another gopi repeated the same melody, but in a special metrical pattern. And Krishna praised her also. I'm sure Karuna Bandar was probably there as well. When one gopi grew tired from the Ras dance, she turned to Krishna, standing at her side, holding a baton, and grasped his shoulder with her arm. Upon the shoulder of one gopi, Krishna placed his arm, whose natural blue lotus fragrance was mixed with that of the sandalwood pulp, anointing it. As the gopi relished that fragrance, her bodily hair stood on end in jubilation, and she kissed his arm. Next to Krishna's cheek, one gopi put her own put her own arm, must be, I think. Beautified, put her own cheek. Yeah. Sorry. Beautified by effulgence of her earrings, which glittered as she danced. Krishna then carefully gave her the betel nut he was chewing. Another gopi became fatigued as she danced and sang, the bells on her ankles and waist tinkling. So she placed upon her the comforting lotus hand of Lord Achyuta, who was standing by her side. These are different relationships between the gopis and Krishna. Thus the gopis danced with the Supreme Lord in the arena of the Ras dance as swarms of bees sang in accompaniment. In this way, Krishna took pleasure in the company of the young women of Braj by embracing them, caressing them, and glancing lovingly at them as he smiled his broad, playful smiles. It was just as if a child were playing with his own reflection, because the reflection is the gopis. Gopis are actually his own internal potency. They're none different from Krishna. So Srimati Radharani is his Ladini Shakti, the first expansion as devotee of Krishna, first expansion of the internal energy of the Lord. So the gopis are also manifestations of Radharani. So they're all part of the internal. So he's just like playing with his own reflection, the child playing with his own reflection, because they're his own anyway. The wives of the demigods, observing Krishna's playful activities from their aeroplanes, were entranced and became agitated with lust. Indeed, even the moon and his entourage, the stars, became astonished. Seeing that the gopis were fatigued from the conjugal enjoyment, merciful Krishna lovingly wiped their faces with his comforting hand. Overjoyed from the touch of his fingernails, the gopis chanted his glories. To dispel the fatigue of the gopis, Krishna entered the water of the Yamuna, followed swiftly by bees who were singing like the best of the Gandharvas. He appeared like a lordly elephant entering the water to relax in the company of his consorts. In the water, Krishna found himself being splashed on all sides by the laughing gopis who looked at him with love. As the demigods worshipped him by showering flowers from their airplanes, the self-satisfied Lord took pleasure in playing like the king of the elephants. Although the gopis were firmly attached to Lord Krishna, whose desires are always fulfilled, the Lord was not internally affected by mundane sex desire. So we have to understand that these are not ordinary mundane pastimes that happen in this material world between lusty people. This is the Supreme Lord with his pure devotees. And these are wonderful pastimes which are relished, not just by the Lord and his devotees, in his gopis, but all the devotees who hear these pastimes. So this is a really nice painting, which shows what we just read very nicely. Krishna's lifting of Govardhan Hill, his killing the demons, Putana and others are obviously extraordinary activities. Similarly, the Ras dance is also an uncommon activity, cannot be imitated by ordinary men. Ordinary person engaged in occupational duty like Arjuna should execute his duties for the satisfaction of Krishna. That is within his power. Arjuna was a fighter and Krishna wanted him to fight for his satisfaction. Arjuna agreed, although at first he was not willing to fight. Duties are required for ordinary persons. They should not jump up and try to imitate Krishna and indulge in Ras Leela and thus bring about their ruin. So the lesson to learn from now, of course, is that Krishna can never do anything irreligious because he is religion personified. How can he possibly be sinful? So by this enjoying with the gopis, this is not mundane activity. We have to understand that. And we should not try to imitate or even hear others imitating such pastimes is not good. And this is where Parikshit Maharaj, he questions this morality of Krishna. When Parikshit Maharaj heard the narration of Krishna's conjugal pastimes with the gopis, which superficially resemble the activities of lusty persons, he expressed a doubt. How can the Lord of the universe, who descended to this earth to establish religious principles, violate them by touching other men's wives? So Parikshit Maharaj, he is examiner. He questioned Sukadeva Goswami about the behavior of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami replied, the status of powerful controllers is not harmed by any apparent audacious transgression of morality we may see in them, for they are just like fire which devour everything fed into it and remain unpolluted. But one who is not a great controller should never imitate this behavior, or he will simply destroy himself, just as a person who is not Rudra, Shiva, would destroy himself if he tried to drink an ocean of poison, even a drop of poison. One may argue that since Krishna is supreme authority, his activity should be followed. In answer to this question, Sukadeva Goswami has clearly stated that Ishwaram, the supreme controller, may sometimes violate his own instructions, but this is not possible for the controller. This is only possible for the controller himself, not for the followers. Uncommon, unusual activities by the controller can never be imitated. Sukadeva Goswami warned that the conditioned followers, that's like us, who are not actually in control, should never ever imagine imitating the uncommon activities of the controller. So that's one argument. And then Sukadeva Goswami explains also, Lord Krishna, being the supreme absolute truth, is the only actual enjoyer and object as well of enjoyment. This is a really important point. He is the enjoyer, and we are to be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. Even though he is Atmarama, self-satisfied. He doesn't need external enjoyment to please him. He's self-satisfied, but he still performs these wonderful activities. And why does he do that? Actually, for the satisfaction of the enjoyed. When we serve the Lord, we get great enjoyment, great ecstasy. And that ecstasy is not even felt by Krishna himself. And that's why he takes the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He takes the love of Radharani, the service mood of Radharani, to try to understand how can she love him so much that he cannot experience that love of himself. So that's fascinating, actually. Although he is one without a second, he expands himself into many forms to increase his personal pastimes. Therefore, great scholars say that Krishna's Ras Leela is like child's playing with his own reflection. So here we go again, same point as before. Sri Krishna is self-satisfied, fully endowed with inconceivable transcendental opulences. When he exhibits such pastimes as a Rasa Leela, all living beings from Brahma down to the blades of grass become merged in the ocean of astonishment. These are truly astonishing pastimes. Let's see what this says. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord clearly says that whenever he appears, he does so by his internal potency. He is not forced to accept a body by the laws of karma, just like an ordinary living entity is. Every other living entity is forced to accept a certain type of body by his previous actions. But when Krishna appears, he always appears in his original spiritual form. It is not forced upon him by the actions of his past deeds. Very important point. So this is really confirming that he's beyond material behavior. His behavior is completely on the spiritual platform. Material activities never entangle the devotees of the Lord, let alone not to speak of the Lord himself. So how can material activity, material behavior, so-called material behavior have any impact on the Lord? There's no question of bondage for the Lord himself. He appears of his own accord. Supreme Absolute Truth, Krishna, is present within the heart of all living entities as their indwelling witness. When out of his mercy, he exhibits his intimate pastimes to his devotees, these activities do not reduce his reputation. They increase his reputation, because he is actually, by performing these acts, he's taking the risk of becoming defamed, right? He's taking that risk. Why is he taking that risk? He's willing to take any risk to please his devotee. The gopis wanted to enjoy with him, and he satisfied them to the fullest extent, at any risk, at any cost. This is the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. He'll do anything for his devotees. That's what distinguishes him from all the different avatars. His pastimes are super excellent. They cannot be compared with any other avatar, or to speak of ordinary living entities. So if you compare him to Ramachandra or Nrsingadev, they did not perform such activities. But Krishna, he fulfilled the desire of the devotees to the fullest extent. This is the point of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. At any cost, even he would be defamed, he didn't care. He wanted to fulfill the desires of the devotees. The cowherd men, bewildered by Krishna's illusory potency, thought their wives remained at home at their sides. Thus, they did not harbor any jealous feelings against Krishna. After an entire night of Brahma passed, that's quite a long time. One day of Brahma, I think, is 4.3 billion years, something like that. One night is also 4.3 billion years. So somehow, it's a little bit like the TARDIS. I don't know if you ever watched Doctor Who. He used to walk into his telephone booth, and it was like a huge building or a huge room. So Krishna can extend one night to be the night of 4.3 billion years, night of Brahma. And that's what happened. That Rasa Leela dance night was not 12 hours. It was 4.32 billion years. That's how long they enjoyed. After an entire night of Brahma had passed, Lord Krishna advised the gopis to return to their homes, although they did not wish to do so. The Lord's beloved consorts complied with his command. Any living being who hears of the spontaneous loving attraction the gopis felt for Krishna will have his desires for material sense gratification destroyed at the root, and will develop his natural propensity for serving the Supreme Lord, the spiritual master, and the Lord's devotees. So this is just a little more, just emphasizing that point. Krishna extended the night of the Rasa dance to cover a great period of time. It lasted millions and actually billions and billions of years. But the gopis could not understand that. How was this possible? Well, Krishna could show his mother the whole universe within his mouth. He can do anything for the pleasure of his devotees. He is the supreme controller. So who are these gopis? Most of the gopis in their previous lives were great sages. So there are certain gopis who are eternally the consorts of the Supreme Lord. They're eternally gopis. Others have become elevated to that position because of their bhakti. So most of the gopis in their previous lives were great sages, expert in the study of Vedas. And when when Krishna appeared as Lord Ramachandra, they wanted to enjoy with him. They saw him in the forest and they said, we want to have conjugal pastimes with you. But Ramachandra said, actually, I have in this incarnation, I've taken the vow of one wife. But when I come as Krishna, I will fulfill your desires. Ramachandra gave them the benediction that their desires would be fulfilled when he would appear as Krishna. Therefore, the desires of the gopis to enjoy the appearance of Lord Krishna was long cherished. So that's the end of chapter 33, the most confidential chapter in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I hope devotees take it in the right mood, with the right understanding. And I hope my Lord has allowed us to convey it in that way. Any questions, any comments from that chapter?
Prabhuji?
Yes, Nariman.
Yes, I'm just walking in the house. How old was Krishna and the gopis? Were the young gopis? And how old was Krishna when this was happening? Ras dance?
8.
Yeah, 8.
So even from a material point of view, 8-year-old
Yeah.
has no lusty desires,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
conception of that. So
This is it. Yeah, yeah. That's important for people to understand.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Okay.
Good point.
All right.
Good point.
And were
Thank
they
you.
young gopis or old gopis?
Yeah, they were all young, about his age, maybe a little older, because some of them were married. So
Yes, some of them were married and some had left the children behind, isn't it? So
yeah.
a bit older. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Prabhuji. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you so much. Thank you for asking. And thank you for joining us. I know you were with us just a few minutes ago. How did you do
Yes,
it?
I was driving. No, we didn't go elsewhere. We did some shopping and then we came back. We went to Deepak
Okay.
and then we drove home. We wanted to go elsewhere, but it's too much traffic. So we came home and we'll do the rest tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. I'm glad you joined anyway. It's good. It's good. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So let's
Haribol, Navi?
Yes.
Hare
Yes.
Krishna?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Very nicely read and explained, and very intricate sort of pastimes, and it's very difficult area, where it can become very controversial or something, but we have to understand it from that spiritual platform. But when we were reading about the gopis when Krishna disappeared, and somewhere in the purport I also kind of read that there were some gopis that were like, maybe it's the sages, like you mentioned, that there's some were sages who were studying Vedas and all that, and then that was in the last kalpa, like previous day of Brahma. Then they became gopis this time, and then there were some shrutis or something like that, that in the next day of Brahma they will become the gopis or something. So it's how Krishna fulfills the desires. So it can happen over a period of time. The time scale, like is Krishna 8-year-old, or from our materialistic point of view, we can say 8-year-old boy and all that, but this is a spiritual realm we're talking about, and the time scale is in the hands of Krishna. So it can, like you said, the Rasa go extended to a night of Brahma. I mean, when it's just a night of Brahma, that's millions of years, but our little tiny material brain over time, we calculate it like, oh, is he a little boy, or something like that, But it's interesting, that this Ras dance and the Krishna fulfills how in the next day of Brahma, which hasn't happened yet as well. But so I read that bit in the purport, and I was quite intrigued.
No, thank you for sharing. That's
okay,
good.
thank you. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So let's see if we should be able to finish chapter 34. And this is a verse, number 23 of this chapter.
So this is 10:34:23. Jagatu sarva bhutana manashravana mangalam tokalpayanto yugapat swara mandala murchitam. Krishna and Balaram sang, producing the entire range of musical sounds simultaneously. The singing brought happiness to the ears and minds of all living beings.
So there's two aspects to this chapter, two subject matters. One is Nanda Maharaj is saved and Shankachuda is slain. Three aspects actually. So this chapter describes how Krishna saved his father Nand from the clutches of a serpent and delivered a Vidyadhara named Sudarshan from the curse of the Angira's sages. It was a whole lot of sages. So what happened? One day, Nand Maharaj and the other cowherd men placed their family members on their bullock carts, including Krishna and Balaram, and went to Ambikavan forest to worship Lord Shiva. This is really interesting. They're worshipping Lord Shiva, who is the greatest Vaishnav. So it shows that Lord Shiva is no ordinary personality, even in the Lord Krishna's time. And he did not protest. He protested when they were worshipping Indra. He said, no, what are you doing? And they said, oh yeah, Indra gives us rain. Well, he's not very smart, is he? Because even the rains fall in the ocean. What's the point of that? So he convinced the coward men to perform Govardhan Puja. So he stopped the worship of Indra, but he didn't stop the worship of Shiva. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So after bathing in the Saraswati and worshipping Lord Sadashiv, the form of Lord Vishnu, they decided to spend the night in the forest. As they slept, a hungry serpent came and began to swallow Nanda Maharaj. Terrified, Nanda cried out in distress, "Oh Krishna, oh my son." And again, very young, but they would always look to Krishna. Please save this surrendered soul. The coward men immediately awoke and began beating the serpent with wooden torches, but the serpent would not release Nand. Then Krishna came and touched the serpent with his lotus foot. Immediately the serpent was freed from his reptilian body and appeared in his original form as a demigod. Krishna, of course, is completely aware of his identity, but he asked him anyway, who are you? And the serpent replied, I am the well-known Vidyadhara named Sudarshan. I was very opulent and beautiful. But once I saw some homely sages of the lineage of Angira Muni. Proud of my beauty, I ridiculed them. And because of my sin of ridiculing them, they cursed me to become a serpent. This cursed me to have this lowly form. So this is a very interesting picture. There's a serpent there. And Nanda Baba being swallowed up. And then Krishna touches him just by the foot. The Gopas are trying to beat the heck out of the serpent to no impact. Krishna simply has to touch his lotus feet through the serpent. And he assumes his natural demigod form. Sometimes the Vaishnavas also observe this ceremony of Mahashivratri because they accept Shiva as the foremost Vaishnava. So it's really interesting. A lesson to learn from this pastime. As soon as Krishna touches someone, they become purified. So let's have a look at Krishna's lotus feet. The demigod said that the merciful sages cursed him for his own benefit. So we often have reverses in our life. They may not be direct curses from any person directly, which is probably our bad karma. But the mood of the devotee is always, it's for my own benefit. Whatever suffering I'm going through, we don't know why we're suffering, whatever karma we've done, but actually the mood of the devotee is for my own good that I'm suffering. Since now he has been touched by the foot of the supreme spiritual master of all the worlds and have thus been relieved of all inauspiciousness. He offered his homage at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And then on the Lord's order, he returned to his own abode. The inhabitants of Braj were astonished to see the mighty power of Krishna. They then completed their worship of Lord Shiva and returned to Braj, chanting Krishna's glories all the way home. Once during the Dola Purnima festival, I wonder if is that Holi, might be Holi. Lord Govinda and Balaram were performing pastimes in the forest at night with the gopis of Braj. Krishna and Balaram sang. So this is the verse that we read, producing the entire range of musical sounds simultaneously. Their singing brought happiness to the ears and minds of all living entities. The gopis became stunned when they heard the singing. They were so attached to Krishna, they were not satisfied simply with the Rasa dance at night. They wanted to associate with Krishna and enjoy his company during the daytime also. When Krishna went to the forest with his cowherd boy friends and cows, gopis did not physically take part, but their hearts went with him. Then the gopis used to discuss Krishna amongst themselves, and their talks were as follows. My dear girlfriends, one gopi said, do you know that when Krishna lies on the ground, he rests on his left elbow and his head rests on his left hand. He moves his attractive eyebrows while playing his flute with his delicate fingers. And the sound he produces creates such a wonderful atmosphere. Their moods were just totally engrossed in the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thoughts of the Lord. At that time, a servant of Kuver named Sankachuda boldly came forward and began abducting the gopis. So he was a brave soul, crazy soul. The young girls cried out, Krishna, help us. And he and Balaram began chasing after Sankachuda. Don't be afraid, Krishna called out to the gopis. In fear of the Lord, Sankachuda left the gopis aside and ran for his life. Krishna chased after him, swiftly approached him, and with a blow of his fist removed Sankachuda's jewel together with his head. Then Krishna brought the jewel back and he gave it as a present to Lord Balaram. Krishna and Balaram, they had such a fantastic relationship. So this is the pastime of Sankachuda. You can just about see his jewel here. Very valuable jewel resembling a conch shell. That's why his name is Sankachuda. So, and this is the pastime where Krishna protects the gopis and gives Sankachuda a beating and takes that valuable jewel and presents it to his own brother. Krishna is very generous. And just a couple of pictures. So after the Rasa Leela dance, Krishna went into the forest of Vrindavan, accompanied by the damsels. Oh no, sorry, this is something else. After another incident, this same incident, sorry, he began to sing very melodiously. And the gopis were so absorbed in their rhythmical singing, his rhythmical singing, that they almost forgot themselves. Krishna is the best of singers. It's one of the lessons. So that's the end of chapter 35. Is it 35 or 34? 34. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, Madhusan Babu, would you like to take us through the instructions, please?
Very well. Okay. Okay. It's a little bit tricky to say, sort of find what sort of key points or instructions that can, but
Yeah.
very interesting. So chapter 33 then is Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. As regards the Rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis, Srila Prabhupada explains that even the demigods in heaven, in charge of maintaining propriety in the universe, ecstatically accepted the Rasa dance as the ultimate religious affair, completely different from the perverted reflection of romance we find in this mundane world. So even the demigods were accepting the fact that this is on a different level. It's not so from a mundane point of view. So we have to understand, we have to have that understanding actually. And it's also amazing that the gopis are very artistic, and they use mudras in their dance, and then they created 16, and it says in the purport, like they created 16,000 different ragas or musical modes, and these have subsequently been disseminated throughout the world, and that even today devotees throughout the world sing the praises of Krishna following the example of the gopis. And we can see how wonderfully, Karuna Bandar sings as well, with this music. And interesting enough as well that, some of these singings are in very melodious. They have certain types of meters and certain times of the day when they should be sung, and certain times they have certain effects on the body and all that sort of thing as well, and mind, and also the soul. So, and I was reading a case actually in regard with this, that in Tamil Nadu, they're trying to eradicate this, or some organization anyway. There's always this pressure on Hindus. They're saying that in Tamil Nadu they should be doing all these pujas and all that in the temples in Tamil and not in Sanskrit. Well, that's what they've been doing it for thousands of years, and they're saying in Sanskrit they should, they've been doing it in Sanskrit. They put pressure on them to say that, well, you should be doing this in Tamil now. But then you have to translate into Tamil, then some of the translations of Sanskrit. But then they was making a point, and the judges in the court, this is a case going on in court actually. You wouldn't believe it, somebody's brought a case against it. Because some of these temples are being controlled by the government. And they're saying, well, you're not going to the Christians and saying, you can't do worship in certain way, and you can't go to the mosque. So you're not going to mosque and saying, well, you shouldn't be doing your worship in Urdu or this or whatever, Quran. And so why are you putting pressure on the temples? They've been doing these mantras. The Brahmins have been learning these. So they've been studying, they're making a study of it and saying that, Sanskrit, when it's chanted, the mantras, they have very powerful effects. And sometimes if you get it wrong, they can have a very negative effect as well. So you got to be careful. But still, the Sanskrit, the way it's pronounced, the way the sound and everything, and they're doing a lot of research in America and Germany and all that. And that's why some places they encourage Sanskrit, and they say Sanskrit also helps in computer programming and all sorts of things. So it's not to be discounted so easily, but there's this pressure going on in the interesting, they want to encourage Tamil kind of worship because they want Tamil language and all that. But this is anti Sanatan Dharmi moves. Sometimes they take place in India. So there's anyway. I thought I would just explain on that. So it's good to actually chant the mantras in Sanskrit while we're reading Bhagavad Gita and all that, and then the encouraged to keep going through the Sanskrit bits as well, which is actually got a very positive effect on our consciousness as well. And then on imitating great personalities, one who is not a great controller should never imitate the behavior of ruling personalities, even mentally. It says, even mentally, if out of foolishness an ordinary person does imitate such behavior, he will simply destroy himself, just as a person who's not Rudra, would destroy himself if he tried to drink an ocean almost. So you made that point about, not to imitate Krishna or Lord Shiva or great personalities, to see to our limits. In chapter 34, then in this chapter, we see how even Nand Maharaj and the gopis called out to Krishna to save them from the danger from a serpent who was a worshipper of Vidyadhara previously, and Sankhchuda was a servant of Kuvera. They respectively, in both these cases, Krishna saves them and liberates them, not only just save them. So we should also call out to Krishna when faced with danger. So that's the main thing coming out of this chapter. So thank you very much. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Any other comments, any questions? Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna Karuna.
Prabhuji,
Yes.
from what we sang in the songs of Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it was mentioned that the snake was the personification of merging with Supreme Krishna, the protector of the devotees. And Shankachuda was the personification of fame. So that's
Okay.
yeah.
Very good.
That's why they were killed by Lord Krishna.
And when we remember that, it also destroys our
Yes,
demon
that's what we
within us.
were reading in the book Krishna Samhita.
Hey, that's really good what you just said, because when we go through the demons, it's good to understand how that particular pastime can actually help us.
Yeah, about the anarthas.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Good point.
And also earlier or today, singing, in the translation, there was something about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Is it Bhaktivinoda Thakur's today, wasn't it? I came slightly
Yes.
late. But yeah, in that song, he said, I will be writing so many songs or something like that. That's all in glorification. So there was something and I picked up in translation anyway.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are a series of songs that will come where you'll be addressing to his mind, something like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Guruji, I have a question, kind of a stupid question actually.
That's all right. But I'm sure it's not.
I just want to understand, what do the scriptures mean when they say, disease of the heart, like lust, disease of the heart? We know no heart surgeon can cure us of lust, right? What exactly do the scriptures mean when they say disease of the heart?
It's a disease that the soul has of it desires, basically. It's unwanted desires.
Right.
That's the essence, because the heart is a physical organ. So just obviously having a heart transplant won't necessarily even cure us from still having desires, because the soul inherently has these desires. But
Right.
the heart is also associated with feelings and also desires, So that's
Right.
why it's related back to the heart. But actually, the heart has got nothing to do with anything.
Yeah,
Right.
because I think somewhere it also mentioned that the Atma is actually in the area of the heart. So I think that's where the connection is.
Right. So they're not referring to the physical organ, the heart.
No.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something subtle,
Sorry?
like something subtle.
Subtly, yeah.
Yeah, it's because the soul is in that region, so the desires are part of the within that the soul, isn't it? Desires are
the soul desires.
The soul desires all these things.
Yeah.
Right. So basically it's a disease related to, as you said, unwanted desires, or like.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's the essence of our problem. Unwanted desires.
Yeah, Haribol, in this regard, I was listening to Shri Maharaj talking about how we get desires or something. Like he gave an example, like for example, says that we're walking along and somebody has put a fresh new cement on the road, on a pavement or anything like that, and then there's this area which says, oh, please do not walk on this till it gets dry. But because it said you do not walk on it, you deliberately walk on it and leave a footprint on it. And then when the cement dries, because you're doing what you're not supposed to, you're told not to do it, and we do it. So in the same way, we're told not to do something, and we still have this desire and we do it. That has now left a footprint in the dry cement now. So like that, there are so many footprints left within in the imprints of a desire that we've had from lifetimes, who knows, you know? So that's what there needs to be kind of, when he says, when you're chanting and all that, that Cheto Darpana Marjanam, cleansing of the heart. That's how I understand it, Samar. So sort of explain that. And Mataji said, yeah, quite rightly, the soul, the seat of the soul is in the heart region. And together with the soul, there are these subtle bodies as well. We should remember that there's the mind, intelligence, false ego, and all that. There's subtle bodies as well. So we're not just looking at the gross heart itself.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Is
you.
that okay with us?
Yes, that
Very
helps.
good. Very good. Thank you
Thank
so much. And thank you for joining. It was a nice surprise. Anybody else? Anything? Hey, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.